Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we have something very interesting to take a look at today. I recently found these on Mercari. These are Jurassic World Dominion cake toppers, or at least that's what the listing told me, and they're very interesting, very cool minifigures. They're not the best, that's definitely for sure, but I thought they were cool enough that I would throw up a review of them here on the channel, and I'm actually thinking about repainting maybe the entire bunch just because even though the sculpts aren't quite as highly detailed as, your average minifigure would be, I feel like some of the sculpts are really quite nicely done. Like specifically, the Pyroraptor has some beautiful feathers there out on the arms, which you can't really see it right now, but like something that the Mattel version was missing. It actually has some decent feather detail to it. And we have 10 species overall. We've got a Pyroraptor, a Dilophosaurus, Parasaurolophus, of course, Tyrannosaurus rex. We've got an Atrociraptor. We have Velociraptor Blue, Giganotosaurus and Allosaurus, Dimetrodon and Therizinosaurus. Of course, they didn't give us a Carnotaurus, but still a plethora of different species here, and they're all really quite nice. So let's go ahead and jump straight to a closer look at these right now. So we will begin with the Dilophosaurus, and again, the Dilophosaurus might be one of the weakest of the bunch, but as a whole, it looks okay. We've, of course, got that classic frill exposed and looking nice and hostile here. Don't really have too much going on as far as coloration goes, but, it looks okay, I guess. We have at least some color, and because they're, cake toppers, I don't really expect too much coloration or anything, but again, even though the fine detail isn't that incredible, and you can definitely see looking through the course of the figure, like there's not really a whole lot as far as scale detail or skin folds or anything, but you can see like muscle definition in the legs, and overall a decent looking sculpt. We've got some okay looking detail there in the frill. You do actually have the inside of the mouth painted, but one of the worst aspects I think of these figures would be the placement of the eyes, and you can see that here as the eye is almost up in the palate area of the Dilophosaurus. A little better, I think, on this side, but still not really that great. But, being really cool figures, they're almost like the type of figures you would have seen in the old Jurassic Park game. That's kind of how I feel that these sort of look. And I feel like with a fresh coat of paint, they could look really nice. Like if somebody actually took the time out to give them some precise paintwork, they could look okay. And that's kind of my intentions potentially with these. One of the reasons I actually really wanted to get a hold of them. Then you've got the Parasaurolophus, and you can again see that it looks okay. Like it's got a decent looking head sculpt. They're basically like the gist of what the dinosaurs look like, minus the fine detail. Though I will say this one has a little bit nicer detail than what we see on the Dilophosaurus. Like it does have some skin texture. It's really quite fine for the most part. There's not really much going on coloration wise on any of these, but you can see we have like a grayish tone, and we've got some blue up on the crest, and we also have some blue stripes running down the back. Very Jurassic World Dominion like as far as the coloration goes, which again would be exactly what you would expect considering it's replicating a Jurassic World Dominion style Parasaurolophus. We do also have paint on the nails of the figures. All of them I do believe have that, so pretty interesting we get that on cake toppers, but not on a lot of the mainline Mattel figures. But again, sculpt-wise, it definitely replicates a Jurassic World Dominion-style Parasaurolophus quite nicely, and again is honestly just screaming for some nice-looking paintwork. Now, some of them have some decent-looking paintwork, like Velociraptor Blue, if my camera would focus on her. You can see that we do have like a decent amount of paintwork on her. We've got the gray, we also have the blue stripe, of course, and it's not perfect. You can see it doesn't run up perfectly into the eyes or anything like you would see on Velociraptor Blue, but at least it, is a little extra as far as coloration goes. The eyes are actually kind of decently placed on this one. Definitely better than the Dilophosaurus was, and you can see inside the mouth, but this time we don't actually have any paintwork inside the mouth. But as far as like a Velociraptor Blue figure, again, that's pretty decent. I'm actually pretty surprised, though, to see this one doesn't have nail paint. I thought they all did. But of all things, you would want Velociraptor Blue to have nail paint, but it actually does not have it here on this figure, which is a little upsetting now that I think about it. But again, the sculpt is pretty nice, and there's actually, I kind of feel like some decent detail in this one. But since, again, the paint job isn't really the best, I feel like it's hard to tell just how nice these sculpts truly are until you kind of try to highlight the detail with a little bit of a nicer paint application, but still a pretty cool looking Velociraptor Blue. Then we have ourselves, again, another moment where it doesn't want to focus, but we've got the Pyroraptor, and I think the Pyroraptor actually looks really nice. Like, there's some decent looking feather detail on this one. And actually, again, no painted nails. I'm really confused by this. I, for some reason, thought they all had painted nails, but they clearly do not. But you can see, again, the eyes are definitely too big as far as the paint application goes. They don't look horrible, but they're not really that great either. You can see the teeth painted on the inside of the mouth, though, which is a plus, even though this side's really sloppy. But we basically have like some reddish tones for the majority of the figure. Gorgeous looking feather detail actually leading out into the tail. I really think the Pyroraptor is one of my favorites of this bunch just because the sculpt is fairly nice and is a lot more screen accurate than you see on like the Mattel version. Again, just the simple inclusion of those feathers out on the arms just makes a world of difference as far as the appeal factor goes for this figure. Definitely one that I really, really do want to repaint and get a good idea of how nice it could look with some decent paint application, because the sculpt is actually really quite nice on this one. Then you have Rexy, and Rexy's eyes might be the worst of all. Look at the eye placement of this poor Tyrannosaurus. Like, I don't know what happened to that. And the teeth are down on the lower jaw, and originally I kind of didn't want to paint them because I do like keeping things original, but this one, that paintwork in the face is just so bad. I feel like to save the figure, it needs to be repainted. Again, the sculpt and detail is actually really quite nicely done for something like this. Like, you can even see the muscles tensing here very nicely in the leg. You can see kind of skin stretching as the Rex is taking a nice step forward. No real wonderful paintwork, just basically some really sloppy painted nails and stuff, and a little bit of splotches of paint there in the face for the eyes and teeth, and then a brown coloration for the majority of the figure. But sculpt-wise, again, it's actually a quite decent-looking T-Rex. And pretty much follows the same trend of these figures where it just really needs a repaint because the sculpt honestly deserves better. Then we've got ourselves an Atrociraptor, and again, it's decent looking, but not really that great. This one, I feel like the tail might be a little bit too short, but you know, from some angles it doesn't look terrible. From up above it actually looks pretty good. But I think we're trying to replicate Atrociraptor Ghost here with this one, since we have that whitish tone, and yet again, the sculpt, actually we have painted nails on this one, but the sculpt looks really good, and with some more precise paintwork, I feel like it would look even better, but the paintwork of this one kind of is okay. Like, we have coloration on the inside of the mouth. It doesn't look like the teeth are specifically painted, but it kind of does from certain angles at the same time. And then we have the eyes painted with a red and a black pupil, and then basically a white coloration and some stripes down the back. But for being a cake topper, and we also have painted nails, but for being a cake topper, like, that's not half bad, assuming that's what these actually are, but they certainly do seem like they are. Again, I don't know where you can purchase these outside of Mercari. I don't know if you can buy these at, like, Walmart or not. I didn't really look into it enough. I just kind of purchased them when I saw them because I thought they were really neat, and said, I'll search for more later. Maybe I'll find another set and keep those original and then just repaint these. But again, decent looking Atrociraptor. I kind of like the pose as well. Very menacing looking pose that we have for this one. And then we've got the Dimetrodon, which might be one of the nicest overall as far as fine detail goes. Like, you can see some nice looking scale detail throughout. The eyes are painted there. The mouth is not painted, but you can even see like the tongue inside the mouth and everything. And we basically just have like a grayish, kind of almost like a brownish tone actually, like a very light brown, and then orange for the sail and eye paint. We don't really have nail paint or anything, but definitely one of my favorite sculpts from this group as far as the very fine detail goes, and really quite nicely replicating that kind of Jurassic World Dominion style Dimetrodon. Like, as far as screen accuracy goes, I feel like they nailed it here on this Dimetrodon. Very cool looking figure, and you can even see areas like the rib cage there in the stomach region from certain angles. There you go, you can kind of pick up on it. So detail wise, I would say that either the Pyroraptor or the Dimetrodon would definitely be the best one here of the group. And honestly, I'm so impressed with how nice these are. These really are going to be high up on my repaint list. I actually might get to work on these very soon. Then we've got ourselves the Allosaurus, and the Allosaurus has one of the longest tails I think I've ever seen, if my camera would focus on this again. But you can see the tail is really long on our Allosaurus. But sculpt-wise, again, it's got some decent detail. Better than a lot of them. It is a bit larger than a lot of the other figures, so of course that benefits the sculpt when it comes to showing off the detail. The nails are actually painted pretty nicely on those feet. The hands not so much. They kind of just slop paint over, but the nails of the feet look pretty decent. And again, you can see all kinds of detail, like really nice scale detail. You've got some nice muscle definition. Yet again, the rib cage showing up there. The teeth are sculpted pretty nicely. And the paintwork, of course, has that bluish tone, but it doesn't look perfect. Of course, you're not going to get very highly detailed paint jobs and stuff like this. It's just basically like, actually you can see how inconsistent the paint is from one side of the face to the other. But you're of course going to just basically get like a very lazy paint application because they're not meant to be very highly detailed figures when it comes to like a collecting standpoint. They're just really cool figures to put on a cake and please some kids, but personally, I think they deserve so much more because they're probably some of the coolest looking Jurassic World style sculpts that are out there currently on the market as far as the Dominion figures go. So really nice looking Allosaurus. Then we have ourselves the Therizinosaurus, and this one as well has some very nice, very shaggy feathers on it, just like you see on the Dominion version. The head sculpt looks okay, no paint application in the mouth or anything, but we have some red eyes, even though that's not how the, Therizinosaurus looks in Dominion. But the nails are painted here of the hands, not exactly perfectly, but they look okay. You've also got paint on the feet, and it kind of pretty much replicates the Therizinosaurus pretty nicely, but this one I feel like should have been a little bigger, just because the dinosaur is quite large, and although this one's not that small, but it feels like it needed to be bigger, and a little bit more impressive. In my opinion, the Therizinosaurus is definitely one of the stars, if not the star, of Jurassic World Dominion when it comes to the incredible scene that it has with Claire. And I really, again, would have liked to have seen it a little bit larger, but it's still a pretty darn nice looking Therizinosaurus. And then the final one, of course, would be the Giganotosaurus, and this is the biggest figure out of all of these. It actually sports a really decent size to it, like definitely pretty big, even in comparison to the Rex. Like if you look at it next to our Rexy that we have here, the Giganotosaurus is significantly larger than the Tyrannosaurus Rex is. And detail-wise, again, it shows off the detail pretty nicely for what it is. A lot of decent detail throughout because, again, the size is increased. Like you could see even skin wrinkles and everything there in the neck region. Lots of really nice scale detail, especially the more armored areas up there on the back. And they have a little bit more paint application to this one. You've got the paint on the inside of the mouth, a little sloppy, but it's there. You've got the teeth painted, the eyes painted, not perfectly, but they are painted. You also have like painted nails, and then you have the green majority of the color of the body, and then you have the darker green running down along the back, and then a random sloppy splotch of yellow that I don't know why is there. But again, it really is a beautiful sculpt, like definitely one of the coolest looking Giganotosaurus sculpts I've seen for the Dominion films so far. So I'm definitely going to be repainting these guys very soon. And of course, when I do, I will throw that video up here on the channel just to show you guys again how much nicer these figures look, I think, or at least I'm thinking they're going to look once there's some more realistic paint application on them. But still, this one is a really cool looking version of the Jurassic World Dominion Giganotosaurus. As far as a size goes, of course, I'm not going to measure each and every one. I'm just going to hold the tape measure here over the top to give you a rough idea of the size. And you can clearly see, like, the smallest, I would say, would be the Dilophosaurus or the Dimetrodon. You can see the largest would definitely be the Giganotosaurus. You have three that are pretty sizable, which would be the Giganotosaurus, the T-Rex, and the Allosaurus. The Therizinosaurus, the Atrociraptor, and the Parasaurolophus, I would say, are like mid-sized. And then you've got Blue, Pyroraptor, the Dilophosaurus, and Dimetrodon that are a bit on the smaller side. But for a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Dilophosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our really cool Jurassic World Dominion cake topper figures, and you can really see again that there is a massive size difference here. Obviously, these cake toppers are very small. Considering they're meant to go on cakes, you're going to expect them to be small. Again, I'm assuming that's what these actually are, but that's what they were labeled as in the listing. But again, you can definitely see that they are on the smaller side. And then for one more size comparison, there in the back on the left, you can see a Mattel minifigure Giganotosaurus. And in the back right behind Rexy, you can also see a Captives Jurassic World Dilophosaurus. Again, showing you that these are very similar sizes, I would say, to, many of the other minifigure brands out there, like the Captives and the Mattel minifigures. One upside they have, though, over the Mattel figures is that the proportions are a lot better, like the sizes of the feet and stuff like that. But still, again, right around in that same size range. So these Jurassic World Dominion cake topper figures are actually really awesome. Again, the paint jobs that they're given are really quite sloppy. They're not very good at all. I would say probably some of the worst paint jobs I've ever seen on dinosaur figures, but they're not meant to have really highly detailed paint jobs, so it's totally understandable. What they basically give you paint-wise is just the gist of what these figures and these dinosaurs would look like in Dominion, so it's again the most basic of paint jobs, but even still with basic paint jobs, they still kind of look okay, like they at least took the time out to paint some of the insides of the mouths, some of the teeth, the eyes, some of the nails, so they have kind of given them some okay paint on some, but the paintwork is just so sloppy that it really doesn't look good for the most part. The sculpts, I think, look great, honestly. Of course, they're not super highly detailed, but they're detailed enough for what they are, and they're also really quite screen accurate mostly. Like, they definitely replicate the dinosaurs that they are meant to replicate quite nicely for the most part, and I feel like once they have some nice paint application to them, they are going to look extremely nicely done. But detail-wise, fine detail, they're a little lacking, but the overall appearance, I feel like, is pretty spot on for the most part. And again, you have 10 different species, which is really cool to be able to get 10 different minifigures right away and have quite the Jurassic world for yourself with so many different dinosaur figures here. When you have like awesome ones like the Atrociraptor, which I think is pretty nice looking, a little bit off, but still pretty decent. The Therizinosaurus as well looks pretty nice. I do like the sculpt, but again, they're all just screaming for a new paint job. The Allosaurus I do really quite like, just because the sculpt looks a lot better as far as the fine detail goes. Although the tail is exceptionally long, it still looks really quite nice. The Parasaurolophus as well is beautiful. Definitely a very nicely sculpted out figure with that kind of Dominion type of a look. And then you have Rexy, which the eyes are horrible on, but the sculpt is fantastic on that one, really begging for a repaint. The Dimetrodon, I think, is my favorite overall, just because I love Dimetrodon, but also because the fine detail of that one is probably some of the nicest out of all of them. The Dilophosaurus might be my least favorite, just because it looks a little bit weird, but it still would probably look pretty good with better paint apps on it. Velociraptor Blue has one of the nicest paint jobs out of all, but still not really that great. Definitely a gorgeous sculpt, though. The Pyroraptor is definitely my second favorite overall as far as the sculpts go, because it looks great with the actual feathers out on the arms and everything. Definitely a very nicely sculpted out figure. Beautiful feather detail out on the tail as well. And then the Giganotosaurus, I would say, is probably my third favorite of the bunch, and definitely has some of the nicest paint apps overall. Still not great, none of them really have great paint apps, but it's decent on the Giganotosaurus. So as a whole, again, these figures are absolutely awesome, and I cannot wait to get started on repainting these. If you would like to purchase these, I will try to find the link on Mercari to see if they're selling more of them. I will include that link in the description. Otherwise, I guess you could start asking wherever cakes are sold to see if maybe they have the packet with these figures in it. I don't really know. I know I'm probably going to be checking my local Walmart just to see if they do have them. But again, if not, make sure you check the link in the description. Maybe you can pick these up from Mercari, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.